The Arcana skill measures how much you know about arcane magic and creatures, and it is one of the four magic traditions that include arcane, divine, occult, and primal. Now, if you need to identify something that's arcane, your Arcana skill is going to be the one that you're going to be counting on. My name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. Now, the Arcana skill is an intelligence based skill that informs you on anything within the arcane tradition. Whether you are trained or not, you can always use recall knowledge to attempt to learn about arcane theories, traditions, creatures, and anything like that of arcane significance. Creatures that you might think of are dragons, beasts. One of the new ones that we saw recently, the Mirage Dragon that might be coming out with remaster, would fall into this particular tradition here. As well as there are planes that you would use Arcana for your recall knowledge. That would be the astral, elemental, and shadow planes. Now, recall knowledge itself is surprisingly complicated as an action, and there is not a little bit of controversy about it, generally dealing with whether it is a bit vague, what specifically you should let your players know if they succeed on a recall knowledge. Is there an order of what would be more important, less important? So there's a little bit of controversy on that, and that is really a whole nother video, so I won't get into that. But always try to match your check for what traditions you are trying to check for. So if you are looking for something arcane, you would use Arcana. If you're looking for something divine, you would go to religion. If you are looking for something occult, occultism. And if you are looking for something primal, you would use your nature skill. Now, there are some trained actions you can do with Arcana that are pretty useful. This would be your decipher writing, identify magic, and learn a spell. And we'll go ahead and cover those next. Decipher writing has the concentrate, exploration, and secret trait. Secret trait meaning that this would be a secret role to your GM. So what you are trying to do is you are attempting to decipher writing on any obscure topic. If you are working on this, it is 1 minute per page of text, but it can take longer depending on the complexity of the page you're looking at. For example, if there were ciphers on it or something that you had to identify, maybe a drawing or something like that, to even determine where you need to start on the page, that would take longer. Generally speaking, that is going to be up to the GM, or it could be in the text if you're doing a prepared adventure path or something along those lines. The text does need to be in a language that you can read. However, if it is not in a language you can read, the GM can allow you to use a society check to see if you can't at least get the gist of what that particular language is. But in that case, it would be a society check and not an Arcana check. The DM is determined by the state of what you are trying to decipher or the complexity, all done by the GM. Once again, when we're talking about complexity, we're talking about complexity of the text, meaning a highly technical document that not many lay people would understand, or if it's a cipher. Multiple checks may be required based on the length. So in a particular case, if you have a 200-page book, you might need to do a check per chapter. You might need to do a check per page, or your GM might allow you to do a check for the entire book. It kind of depends on what exactly you are looking at. This does have the normal success conditions, and on a crit, you would know the true meaning, whether it was coded or not. So a critical success is always a good thing. A success, you will know the true meaning as well, unless it was coded. Coded meaning that it had a secondary purpose, or what you read topically had to be inferred for deeper meaning. If that was the case, you would only know a general meaning. And on a failure, you wouldn't understand at all, and you are going to take a -2 circumstance penalty to any future checks. On a critical failure, you think you understand everything, but you have totally misconstrued it. So you want to avoid a critical failure if you can. However, once again, this is going to be a secret check to your GM. So really, they're going to be the ones that know. Depending on your proficiency level, you will be better or worse at it. The examples it gives you are, if you're trained, entry level philosophy. That's what you're going to mainly be able to understand. Expert, you will be able to work on complex codes such as a cipher. A master, spy master's code, or any advanced research notes that are highly technical, well beyond the level of a layman. Let's go ahead and move on from that to identify magic. Identify magic, same thing, has the concentrate, exploration, and secret trait, so it is going to be a secret roll to the DM. 10 minutes minimum in order to try to identify any type of magic. If there are any interruptions whatsoever, you have to start over. The GM is going to set the DC. If the object that you are trying to identify is cursed or is a particularly esoteric or way out there subject, it would have a higher DC, or it could possibly be impossible. And if the spell you are trying to identify is a heightened spell, the level of heightening does not affect the DC per rules as written. Now, this does have the normal critical success, failure, and critical failure conditions, and let's go ahead and cover those. Now, on a critical success, you learn all the attributes of it: the name, what it does, if it happened to be an item or specific to a certain location, you would know how to activate it, and if it is cursed. On a success, on an item or location, you will have a general idea of what it does, but maybe not the specifics, and you would know how to activate it. Also on a success, if it is an ongoing effect, something that has a duration, a long duration, you will learn the name of it and what it does. However, you cannot try to roll again to get a crit to get more information. If you fail, once again, you fail, you can't identify it at all, and you have to wait 1 day in order to try again. And on a critical failure, you will misidentify what you are trying to identify, and what you get back is usually the GM's choice. So can be a little bit scary sometimes, depending on how much you trust your GM. The last one we're going to go ahead and cover is learn a spell, concentrate, and exploration trait. So this doesn't have the secret like the other two. And the requirement this one has is you have a spellcasting class feature, and the spell you want to learn is in your magical tradition spell list. So it can't be, let's say you are a cleric with divine and you want to learn something primal, but you do not know that tradition, you can't learn it. So what you are trying to do is you are trying to gain access to a new spell of your tradition from someone who knows that spell, or from magical writing like a spell book or spell. So if you are in a magic library, or if you are literally in a school, you could attempt to learn spells that you haven't been trained on before by doing learn a spell. If you know multiple magic traditions, then you can learn a spell from any one of those traditions, but you must use the corresponding skill check. So if you are, we'll go to that cleric, and you have the divine list and you want to learn something occult, you do have the occult spell tradition for some reason. However, you wouldn't use the religion skill, you would use the occult skill because you're trying to learn something occult. To learn that spell, you must do a few things. You must spend 1 hour per level of the spell. You must remain in conversation with a person who knows the spell, or have the magical writing in your possession. So this isn't something that you talk to someone for 5 minutes and then you learn it an hour later, nor is it something where you could scan something at a table and then an hour later you know it. You have to be studying this for the full hour in time. You need to have the materials with the price indicated, but there is a table depending on level on what the price and what the typical DC is. And then you must attempt a skill check for the skill corresponding to the tradition that you are attempting to learn. The DC with that table is going to be determined by the GM, and if it is uncommon or rare, it could have a higher DC. If you do have a spell book and you're a spellcast type caster, you can add that spell to your spell book. And if you prepare from a list, then you can go ahead and add it to your list depending on what type of spellcaster you are. And if you have a repertoire, then you can add it whenever you swap spells out. Does have the normal success conditions. So on a critical success, you learn the spell and you only use half the materials. So if at second level it was 6 gold pieces, well, you would only spend 3 gold pieces. In a success, you expend whatever materials you were required to have and you learn the spell. So you would basically, on that second level spell, spend the 6 gold pieces. On a failure, you fail to learn the spell, but you can try again after you gain 1 level. You do not spend any of the materials that were on that list. So if it was the 6 gold pieces for a second level spell, you would retain those 6 gold pieces. And a critical failure, you do not learn that spell. You have to wait a level just like a failure is, but you do lose half of the materials. So for that second level spell that was 6 gold pieces, you would lose 3 gold pieces. Now, I hope this video might have expanded a little bit on what Arcana is. A lot of people only think of it when they are doing an identify or recall knowledge, but it does have other things that you can do with it. And it is useful. Really depends on what type of character you're playing. But I do hope you learned something from this video and maybe you saw it in a different way or thought of a different way to use it. And I hope you liked it. And if you did like it, feel free to like, subscribe, or go ahead and hit that notification bell. But regardless of what you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.